Welcome back to the Smarktank Revolution, the only place where we kick out at 2. I am your solo host, Joey Business. And today is quite an interesting day. It is Saudi Mania, otherwise known as the Elimination Chamber. And we're not here to talk about that. I'm here to add in our book of records another one of our Smarktank Revolution essentials. So this is where we judge wrestlers based on the Bret Hart gauge of what a complete composite professional wrestler is and their impact on the business and what they've done and how we view them personally and as well as professionally. So we have done so far basically the greats and all from a certain era. But I like to keep people on their toes, and wrestling is not just all WWE or WWF in its heyday. I figured today, since we're on the eve of the Elimination Chamber, and it is very timely in the news, I figured we'd just go off the gambit, open up the forbidden door, and pull another name out of a hat. One that I happen to be a big fan of, but is making a lot of waves in the news right now. And that would be Cody Rhodes. Now, I know it's such an odd choice because Cody Rhodes is still very much in the prime of his career. I say that even though he's 10 plus years in the business, but he's really only starting to hit his stride as of the past few years. But there's a lot to Cody Rhodes to unpack, and I figured, it would be an interesting conversation piece and an interesting listen, hopefully, for you guys. So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to add to this. So welcome to Smarktank Essentials, Cody Rhodes. So with that being said, Cody is going to be judged on the rating criterias. So the first one up is a wrestler's look, scored from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And it's, the aesthetic appearance of a wrestler, what you see, your impression when they walk through the curtain and when they get in the ring. Like, what does it mean to you? What do you see? Well, for me, this is an interesting one because Cody Rhodes is kind of aesthetically very run-of-the-mill. He doesn't, he's a professional wrestler. If you met him in a store or something, you'd guess he's either, some type of sports person, but you wouldn't say football, basketball, or baseball, obviously. Maybe hockey, but Cody Rhodes, you'd say, okay, if I had to guess, he's either an amateur boxer or he's a professional wrestler. And ding, ding, you'd be right. Professional wrestler. So he scores okay on that one. So you would see and identify he's a professional wrestler. Totally get it. But now we're talking appearance and presentation. This is an interesting one. Because if you go by his appearance and presentation, it's changed a little bit over the past 10 years. And really, who hasn't changed in the business if you want to stay relevant and on top of things and make things, interesting? So if you judge him by his WWE appearance when he was very wet behind the ears, he was the son of Dusty Rhodes. So he's a second generation wrestler, like his brother. Or maybe he's a third. I don't know. I think he's a third generation wrestler because Dustin would be second. So he was very plain Jane. Very he had an old school look to him. He didn't have the elbow pads. He didn't have the knee. He was just very, Greco-Roman type wrestling. But he's always had a little something to him that adds extra. But he didn't really stand out in WWE. He was in Legacy with Orton and DiBiase, who is another criminally underused wrestling talent who I wish would have made bigger strides, but unfortunately it didn't go that route. So on a score of 1 to 10, when I look at Cody Rhodes, if I'm going to judge him from here to now, I'm not going to judge him based on his WWE run because, unfortunately, there's nothing super stellar. He had a good run with the IC title. He had, some success in the tag titles. And he had some success in, moderate, memorable moments. But nothing really crazy standout. But if we judge him on indie Cody Rhodes when he left WWE in 2016 and reinvented himself, he went from being, the classic clean-cut, son of a plumber, son of a plumber wrestler he went to chip on your shoulder, just aggressive, very cerebral badass. So he couldn't be the American Dream, so he became the American Nightmare, Cody. For a while, he couldn't even use his own name, which was unreal. But he went to be the American Nightmare, which is a great homage and twist on his father's legacy. And I thought that was cool. Plus, it's just a really cool marketing thing. And then over time, in his tenure in AEW, he became, he had the Nightmare family. He brought in Arn Anderson. He had his wife in there. He built somewhat of a stable and bit of a franchise for himself. And I will have to say, his AEW entrance is probably one of the coolest entrances. I loved the music. I loved how that like chandelier style thing came down to cover him and reveal him. It's a long entrance, but I am a big fan of long entrances. I love Bray Wyatt's entrance. I love The Undertaker's entrance. Triple H. I love long entrances because they're like a theatrical piece. They add more to the puzzle. So that version of Cody Rhodes is definitely going to bump up his rating score for me. So, without dragging this on a wrestler's look, which is the first criteria, I would have to give Cody out of a 1 out of 10. I'd give him an 8. He's not top of the list. He's above mid-card, but he's somewhere in between. He's lost in the shuffle between mid-card and main eventer, in my view. So I give him, an 8. Fair 8. I think he's a strong showing. Like I said, I'm a fan of him. I really connect with him, especially in latter years. When he got let go from WWE and went on his own to reinvent himself, he really hit his stride. He really brought out what was underneath all the time. But, the creative machine and the management in WWE isn't going to showcase anything other than what they want to showcase. And that's where a lot of these wrestlers shine. The Drew McIntyre, the Bobby Lashley, those wrestlers that we get today who are superstars now were pushed to, curtain jerking oblivion when they were with WWE until they left, had some hard bumps, found themselves, and came back a franchise, came back and really reinvented themselves. And, it's funny because without Vince McMahon, you would have nothing. You wouldn't have Hulkamania. You wouldn't have all the creative wonders that we've enjoyed for so many decades. But somewhere along the way, he's lost touch with what a wrestler is today. Because these guys are marquee players, in my view, especially Cody. Marquee players, but they're mismanaged when they're hampered by a creative team that doesn't know what they're doing. So Cody gets an 8 out of 10. Now, promo ability. This is an interesting one. If anyone knows watching the show, Donnie and I, or listening, sorry, one day you'll watch us. I'm a huge, heavy proponent of promos. I like to talk. I have the gift of gab. I like to hear people talk. That's what sells things for me. A lot of the time people are like, oh, I want a 5-star match from Japan and this and that. Yeah, you do, but you need something to sell it. You need something to get you into the stadium. And promos do that. Unless you're so good at your skill that your craft is not speaking, rarely do you connect with the audience without a stellar promo. So that is very key for me. And this is, in all honesty, this to me is what makes a superstar, more than in-ring work. So promo ability is interesting because if I had to grade him in WWE, it would be very low. And rightfully so. He was a newbie. He was wet behind the ears, like I said, very green. Didn't know what exactly a promo was, but this rendition of Cody Rhodes that we've had in recent years has found a passion, and it has ignited him. And he's had some amazing promos. Just the AEW promo he cut at basically the very beginning of AEW's run on TNT, when he referred to this is Ellis Island for wrestlers, was one of the most brilliant promos I've remembered in the past 10 years. And not because it was delivered a certain way, not because the wording was perfect. Scripted promos can be fantastic, just like any movie script can be fantastic. But it was because of the way he meant it. You could tell. That was his freedom. The WWE machine was what he was escaping from, and he came to a new era and a new venue and reinvented himself. So it was Ellis Island. So that promo was a 10 for me. However, that doesn't mean his promo ability is a 10. And I'll explain that further because there's a lot of people who have the gift of gab. The Rock, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, the Miz, MJF. You know, lots of people have amazing promos. Then there's lots of people who have terrible promo skills. Kenny Omega, you know, and I don't care. Fight me on that. Kenny Omega, awful promo. But promo ability. This one I would have to give him... I know he's potentially at his best. Like I said, the Ellis Island promo was a 10. But I would have to give him, in all honesty, he's a 7 for a promo. Not average, above average, again, like his aesthetic. And, you know, he has promos that are knockout the park, and then some promos are just okay. He doesn't always bring it, but he tries, and he's improved leaps and bounds, and that's something that you want. You know? That's something you really, really want. So, I mean, yeah, I give him a 7. I would definitely give him a 7. I think that's important. Potential for a lot higher. But, yeah, a 7. Let me think. You know, like, promos don't have to be delivered all the time expertly, but they do need to be consistent. So that's important to me. But I would give him a 7. And then let's see what's next here. And I apologize. I'm actually getting a message from my co-host right now that we are going to be reuniting. So let's see. Okay, I didn't mean to go off the tangent here, but okay, next. In-ring work. Here we go. So this one's going to be a little interesting. Again, any young wrestler, especially a second generation, third generation, someone growing up in the business, they are going to have it above and beyond usually than anyone coming out of a power plant factory or just an indie person who's completely new to the business. They have ins and outs that we are not privy to. They see things when they're younger and they soak it up differently. You don't agree? Randy Orton, The Rock. Need I say more? So, in-ring work. I would say, like, this one's a little difficult too. I mean, I feel like I'm being harsh on him because I'm so much of a big fan of his, but I have to be honest with myself. You know, this is called the essentials. This is where we grade with honesty. This is not our bipolar booking and, you know, it's just what we feel at the moment. His in-ring work, I give him a 7 as well. Had some great matches, you know, the Blood and Guts with Dustin, the start of AEW. He's had some good ones with Jericho. He's had a good one with Darby Allin, Jungle Boy. He's had some good ones on the indies. He's even had some decent ones in WWE. But I give him a 7 because depends on what dance partner he has, how good his in-ring work is. He's very textbook, but there's nothing crazy flashy to him. Oh, geez, and Sammy Guevara and him have had some great battles too. So I give him a 7. I think that's fair. You know, it's just he can connect with the audience, but he struggles in propelling storylines. I think that's where Cody's fault is. And you can't say it's because of creative or booking because he kind of essentially books himself where he's at now. So I would say a 7, being fair. Nothing terrible, but nothing to like rave about. I wouldn't say go pick out the Best of Cody Rhodes DVD right now. So yeah, I think that's fair. And then now we're going into our ranking scale. So that was based on Bret Hart's ranking scales. So here we go. Ours is a little bit different. It's 1 to 5. Same premise. You know, what it is. Innovative effectiveness. The ability to work as a babyface or a heel. This is tough. Because I know he wants to be portrayed as a badass babyface. And he wants to be beloved by the crowd. And I do love him. But for some reason, people just don't. And maybe it's because he's just not naturally lovable. He does have a a pedigree that's different than other people. You know what I mean? When you come from a different background, you have certain avenues left to you. People aren't going to like you as much. You know, if you work for something really hard and they can see somebody, yeah, I'm not going to say he isn't working hard. He worked very, very hard, but I don't know. He has a little bit of an air of privilege to him. So he's a natural heel to me, and he's a great heel, which I wished AEW leaned into, but I don't think that was their fault. I think it was more Cody's stubbornness and not wanting to be portrayed as a heel. He wanted to be a good guy. He wanted to be the savior of the company, when there's many faces, many talents, and you don't need to be the savior. You just want to be on the team, you know? Sometimes that's good enough. But so no, he can work as a stellar heel, but innovative effectiveness to bounce between babyface and heel. He's not one of those guys who has the gift that, you know, on a Thursday night show he can be a heel, and on a Monday night show he can be a face, and it's totally believable, and you go either way. He works better as a heel than a face. So this one, I got to give him a 3. It's right in the middle again. So I'm just being dead honest. Classic matches and classic rivalries. Well, this one's an interesting mixed bag because he's got 2 iterations of himself to pull from, right? So let's see. He's got some classic matches. As I aforementioned, the one with Dustin in AEW, that was a classic match. Any of his recent battles with Sammy Guevara, those are classic matches. He's had some good ones as dashing Cody Rhodes in WWE. And the rivalries, yeah, he had a great rivalry with Jericho. He had a good rivalry with Darby at the beginning. Most of his AEW stuff is where he's really shining. WWE, like, it was kind of the build-up for that. So it's really tough. I don't see any go-to Cody Rhodes match, which is a shame, other than any of his current Sammy battles and Dustin. Those are the ones I really have to highlight. So this, I've got to give him a 3 as well. I really do. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Here's the climax, the crescendo. Here's everything. We have one more thing called defining and redefining moments. Okay. This is where I wanted to pick this choice because everything else kind of seems very mundane, humdrum, you know, yeah, nothing special. Why is he on the essentials? This category right here is why he's on the essentials. Defining and redefining moments. And, you know, the career-defining moments of a wrestler. Well, if you're going to go by career-defining, it's not just matches. Matches don't define things. Moments define things, which is why I said promo ability is such an important tool in your box as a wrestler, because it's the promos, the great moments that are going to last a lifetime. When The Rock stared down Hogan at WrestleMania 18 and they did the opposite head twist to the crowd, their match was, let's say, a 3 out of a 5, but that moment will stick with you forever. You will always play it back in your head like a tape. So this is where Cody shines because it's totally interesting, and right now it's even more interesting. Up until he left WWE, he didn't really have any defining moments. He won the IC title, which, great tribute to your father. You know, it's a success. It's an accomplishment. Nothing crazy, though. When he left WWE, he became ROH champion. Many people have done that. Nothing crazy. It was a very cool accolade. But then, when he teamed up with the Young Bucks to open up their own pay-per-view, not solicited, not branded by ROH, they opened up their own pay-per-view in Chicago called All In. And when they did this, it sold out almost instantly, within like 4 minutes or something insane. It was so successful. It was the first time a wrestler, not a promoter, a wrestler with another group of wrestlers decided to say, we can do this thing bigger and better than anyone else, and we can give it just as much, and we'll do it for the fans. And they did it, and it was an amazing success. So much an amazing success that AEW was forged and born out of it with Tony Khan. Now, you want to talk about defining and career redefining moments? What could be bigger than a startup company that proved to be the greatest competition the WWE has ever seen since WCW? Now, we're talking 20 years unchallenged. Vince McMahon has been sipping a Mai Tai in an easy chair until AEW came along. And Cody Rhodes was a big catalyst for that. So if you can't say that isn't a career-defining moment, I don't know what the hell is, but that's a career-defining moment right there. So, yeah, that right there. And then now the reason why I said it was so timely is because the same startup company that Cody put his blood, sweat, and tears into to get off the ground, that you thought he was going to live and die by, you thought he was going to be in the annals of time of this company in AEW, just this week he left. His contract ran out shortly after the 3-year mark, and he left. And lo and behold, where's he rumored to be going? Why, back to the very same place that he fled. He's going back to WWE. So think about this. You've left for greener pastures. You've proven yourself a threat. You've gone toe-to-toe with the biggest, meanest, nastiest, wrestling entity in the world. And you've done what you've wanted to do. You think you've hit your stride. And now you say you're coming back. Which is a very interesting thing because we all know Vince McMahon can be very spiteful. And me personally, I'm sitting here going, why in the world would you ever do that? You're going to be, in catering, chasing the 24/7 title for the rest of your career. But reports have it that Vince McMahon wants to push him, give him a big marquee style, main event push. And I think that's only because Vince has a shiny toy that he can say, I just got an EVP, or I got one of the creative minds that started AEW and now they're back with me. Which I think Vince must look at as, if I can get Cody, maybe when the others contracts are up, maybe I can sway them too and break it down from within. But I don't think that's the thing. I don't think that's the strategy here. See, Vince, if you ever listened, I doubt you would. Just because you're pulling a pillar, which let's be honest, I say Cody Rhodes was a pillar. I don't care what the 4 pillars were. Doesn't mean the whole foundation's going to crumble. AEW is doing the one thing that you guys haven't been able to do for the past 5 years with the greatest talent in the world. AEW is building new stars. Who the hell heard of Britt Baker? She's a phenomenon now. Who the hell heard of Sammy Guevara? Phenomenon. Darby Allin, MJF, all these people. You've got the most talented people in the world, and you have them opening matches, or they begging for their release. Because you stubbornly want to push, and deservedly so, Roman Reigns, but you stubbornly want to push everyone else down our throat. Brock Lesnar. You want to keep everyone on the card in some kind of weird time capsule. And you know what? That doesn't fly. And so people relate to that and understand. But, well, anyways, without going off on a tangent and making this too long, career-defining and redefining moments. Well, this is where I can't give Cody anything but a perfect 5. Because Undertaker, The Rock, Stone Cold, all these other people, they've had some of the greatest moments in the history of wrestling. But what could be greater than going toe-to-toe with Vince McMahon living and coming back a conquering hero who's being welcomed? That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you define and redefine a career. And this has been The Essentials on Cody Rhodes.